Well, hello out there in podcast land, and welcome back to Guilty Pleasures, the show where we celebrate the movies we love despite what critics, public opinion, or even our own God-given sense might tell us. I am your host, Lou Hare, for the Front Row Network, and welcome to another listener choice. We put this up on both Twitter and Facebook. We had a showdown of box office blockbusters, and you ended up choosing Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, why?
We'll get into it. We will get into it. But first, let me introduce my guests for this episode. First, returning from from our last reader poll a couple months ago, Super Mario Brothers. Please welcome.
Sorry.
The man who hates our listeners more than anybody, who's taken several bullets for this podcast. Please welcome back Christian Krausby. Welcome, Christian.
How you doing, Lou? It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Always a pleasure to have you. And joining us also tonight, please welcome the editor-in-chief of the Front Row Network, Mr. Jeremy Geckner. How's it going, Jeremy?
It sounds so official when you say it that way. I think I should have that on my business cards now. No, I am so psyched to be on Guilty Pleasures. You guys are definitely, I can't say my favorite because, I can't play favorites. But if there was a court hearing and I had to choose, I would choose you guys. So
thank you. Good. I know that's a Sophie's choice of podcasts.
Oh, yeah. This is like the Kramer versus Kramer scenario,
Yeah.
Like I would definitely choose you guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will tell you the one good thing right off the bat about you choosing this movies, because I think our readers, our listeners are definitely onto something. You love Indiana Jones and you love this podcast. And boy, we got some exciting news, and I'm going to give the floor over to Jeremy to tell you what exactly that news is. What's going on, Jeremy?
Yeah, real quick, exciting stuff. We've been teasing for a couple of weeks now about some new developments with the Front Row Network of stuff that we will be able to do that you will actually be able to come to if you're in the Springfield, Illinois area. And we can finally announce what that is. We announced it last week on social media, but we are starting a film series with the Hoagland Center for the Arts in Springfield, a summer film series called Front Row Flicks. And our very first movie that we are going to be showing is going to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. We kind of put out a little soft questionnaire out on Facebook and Twitter to see what people would say. And overwhelmingly, Raiders was one of those movies that people wanted to see on the big screen again. So what's going to happen? This is going to be on August 7th. The doors will open at 6:30 p.m. The movie will show at 7. There will be activities you can do. There might be a little game where you can try to guess the weight of the idol that Indy has to switch out at the beginning of this. I tried to get a giant boulder, but, unfortunately, those cost just so much to ship, and it's just terrible. But we will be introducing the movie, and then afterward, we will be sticking around for a discussion that we will record and release on podcast. And then, of course, you all can stay around and ask questions about or give your commentary about the movie as well. So August 7th, 7 o'clock p.m., Raiders of the Lost Ark at the Hoagland Center for the Arts in Springfield, Illinois. Mark your calendars.
Yes, please go, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And go for no other reason of we want to see this to become a growing thing, and someday get my happy ass down to Springfield and do a Guilty Pleasures episode and have some fun. So that's one of the good Indiana Jones movies that you're all going to get to enjoy. Let's talk about the Indiana Jones movie that we got to enjoy, in air quotes. Here we go.
Must folks. We, Lou? Must we?
We must. This is what we do on Guilty Pleasures. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. Oof. That's insane, first of all, to think that this movie is already 10 years old. This movie, like 2008, does not seem like that long ago, and yet here we are.
Yeah, and they wheeled Harrison Ford's old ass into that movie, and now they're wheeling him into another one.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
10 years later.
Yeah. So
So I remember, I'm sorry, I was like, you say it was 10 years ago, and it feels like it was no time ago at all.
Yeah.
Like being on IMDb, looking at for any detail that I could possibly find about the plot know what was going on because it was such an exciting time to be alive. Where a new Indiana Jones movie is coming out, and oh God, what have we?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we asked for it.
We did. We had been first Indiana Jones movie since 1989's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So we've gone almost 20 years without an Indiana Jones movie, and this is what we got. So, quick plot synopsis. In the year 1957, Indiana Jones is called back into action in search of a mythical skull while being chased by Russian soldiers, reconnecting with an old flame, and meeting a new young partner.
Well, that almost sounds great, Lou.
Yeah, if only it were that simple.
It really could have been. It really should have been. So yes, Harrison Ford is back. Steven Spielberg's back in the director's chair. George Lucas is on board. He helps write the script along with.
Now I see what's wrong.
Yes. Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. With David Kopp, one of the original screenwriters. This was, the team was back together. This wasn't they weren't, scotch taping something together. They had everybody on board. John Williams is back. Everything is in place. And yet it somehow ended up on the Guilty Pleasures list. And why is that, you might ask? Well, so this movie is a hit. Let's not mince words there. Let's at least give it credit there. It makes $317 million. It's the third highest grossing movie of 2008 behind The Dark Knight and Iron Man.
Iron Man, yeah.
And I would have loved if you'd have had to put a paycheck down on which of those three movies would be considered a disappointment, sight unseen. No one's going to pick the Indiana Jones movie, right?
No, not even close.
So, but part of this is now it makes $317 million, but 126 of that million of that is in its first weekend.
Yeah.
So it plummets like a stone after because word of mouth gets out, and that's where we come in because this has the lowest IMDb score of any of the Indiana Jones movies at 6.3. It's got a 53% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, next to a 77% score by the critics. So the critics actually didn't hate this movie, but man, the fan backlash to this is just intense.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I was definitely there that opening weekend. I was in college and my roommate Brady and I went and saw it because we were such Indiana Jones fans. We're like, holy crap, it's a new one. We skipped class to go see it. And it was just so defined because we walked out of the theater and both of us just kind of walked down the sidewalk for a while, silent. And then it was kind of like, it was literally a sitcom scenario. We both looked at each other at the same time and we were like, that was bad, wasn't it? It was just kind of a shock. Like, no, they didn't just ruin Indiana Jones, right? No, they totally did. And we'll get into why, but it's just the ridiculousness of the story. I mean, that was never what Indiana Jones was, and why they decided to take in that direction, I will never understand to this day.
Christian, how about you? What was were you seeing this opening weekend like everyone else? Or?
No, absolutely. I remember I went to, it was in between college and grad school for myself. So I was at home living with my parents at the time. And I went to the midnight showing on Thursday, and there were people dressed up in their fedoras and leather jackets and people getting bullwhips taken away from them.
Yeah, of course.
And I remember seeing it, and I this is a while ago, so I had tipped a couple back before I had seen it. And after I got out of the theater, I was just like, I might be a little drunk, but that movie was not very good. And then the next day, when I woke up, I'm like, no, it wasn't that bad. It couldn't have been that bad. And then I argued with myself, and then I was just like, no, it couldn't have been that bad. And then I went back to see it a second time.
No,
that same weekend because I I couldn't face reality that the movie was so poor. And I've watched it a number of times since then, and there have been things that have grown on me about it and things that have definitely made it a lot worse over time. So yeah, that's kind of my history with the movie.
So this movie came out the weekend. I was in a wedding the weekend that this came out. So I did not get to see it opening weekend, which I was bummed by because everybody was so hyped for this movie. And then the word of mouth came out and I was like, nah, good. I'm okay. So I didn't end up seeing this until like August.
Oh, wow.
My wife and I went and saw it at the cheap theaters for our anniversary because she's a big Indiana Jones fan too. And we're like, well, you know, at $5, it's an Indiana Jones movie. You know, how bad could it be? You know, but so we had like almost 2.5 months of just like people shitting on it constantly. So we kind of walked in and I remember sitting there thinking, I'm like, what's everybody bitching about? This isn't that bad. Is it? You know, I had kind of the same moment, Christian. I was like, this isn't that bad, right? I mean, and then so I was full disclosure here. That's another podcast, but I anticipated being the stand for this episode, for this movie when we knew we were going to do this movie, because I was like, I remember not hating it and thinking maybe this was just fanboy culture run amok.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched it last night.
And oh, the eyes have been opened.
It is mea culpa, listeners. Because no, this is disappointing to say the least. And I think and it's so let's open with this question first, because it's the question that I've wrestled with. Is this a bad movie, or is it just a bad Indiana Jones movie?
Yeah, you know, that's actually fair because, you know, movies in a series have to get graded on that curve, I think. Mm-hmm. You know, like Sarah and I are huge Harry Potter fans. We love the movies. And so we always have to it's hard for us to grade like, oh, was, you know, the Deathly Hallows Part 1 a good movie, or was it just like kind of not as good of a Harry Potter movie as we're expecting type thing? Mm-hmm. So that's a fair question. But the thing that permeates in this movie for me is that it just seems like every choice was not thought through. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it literally feels like Lucas was in the writer's room and was just like, well, have him swing on some vines with some monkeys. Sure, that makes sense. That's what everybody does in the jungle. I mean, everybody fights straddling 2 jeeps with a sword and a saber. Everybody does that. Yeah, let's throw some gophers in there for no reason. Like, it just sounds like they're just throwing stuff at the wall constantly, and it shows so much. It looks like for as long as they had to do this movie, that they were so underprepared to do it.
Interesting. Christian, what do you say?
Well, I think that it is akin to, or I think that it is a terrible piece of music played by the best orchestra in the
world. Way better put.
Nice.
Like, I remember, because I mean, as bad as and we can talk more about it. The dialogue is atrocious. The plot convoluted, mm-hmm. But the pictures that are framed, the way that certain things are shot, the scenes are edited and put together are done with master strokes. Mm-hmm. Like, consider just the scene before anybody opens their mouth. The scene of the greasers, or the young stuff, and racing the Russians, and the camera moving back between the front of the 2 cars as they're speeding faster and faster and faster down the road is so engaging to watch. The motorcycle chase that is really ends literally on the nose with Marcus Brody's head falling off. is really, really well done. There's so much about it that is amazing, and the dialogue is terrible and the plot stinks.
Right. Yeah, well, you're right though, Christian. Sorry to step on you, Lou, but like it's kind of like Spielberg continues to succeed despite what he's given. You know, it's like Spielberg can't like cover up his superior directing style.
Right.
You know, it's just like even though he has crap to work with, he's just like, well, I'm gonna do my thing.
Right.
And yeah, because you're right. That motorcycle chase in particular is really good.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just God.
This to me feels like it would have been the best of the Mummy franchise.
Oh man.
Just put Brendan Fraser in for Harrison Ford.
First Mummy is a pretty goddamn good movie.
I do love the first Mummy. I will unabashedly say that.
Okay, we'll get you both back on to talk that one later me not so much. But that's what it feels like to me, that it's like this is not it's a horrible Indiana Jones movie. But if this was part of any other franchise, it clearly wouldn't be given the vitriol for all the reasons you guys are saying, because it is so excellently shot and technically, CGI aside. But I think you hit on something too, in that I don't buy that Steven Spielberg, I think he does succeed in spite of himself, because I am yet to be convinced that Steven Spielberg really ever gave a shit about this franchise. Because the story goes, the original Raiders, he didn't want to direct.
Right.
He did that as a favor to George Lucas. And George Lucas wanted to basically recreate the serials that he grew up watching as a kid. And he had this idea. And Spielberg wasn't really on board with it. But he did it as because they were friends, and he, and it became this monster hit. And of course, so then you have to do the sequel and the third one, and then for some
wife too. So
right, exactly. It's like, yeah, if you want me to keep doing this shit, she's on board.
She's the lead, damn it.
And so by the time you get to this, because he actually throws in interviews since, he's actually thrown George Lucas under the bus in the very nicest ways possible when they talk about some of the story elements of those just being, he's just basically, George Lucas is like, his old drinking buddy that shows up into town and is like, yeah, he's going to throw up on my couch. But he bailed me out that one time, so Well,
I mean, you're right though. Like, you gotta kind of figure this out. Like, this is the same group of people that made Raiders, one of usually considered the top 100 films of all time, and The Last Crusade, which is widely considered one of the best as well. Like, how on earth did it devolve into this so quickly? I mean, you got to think one of those people in the originals of these was a check somehow on Lucas's terrible writing. And I just want to know where that check went on this one, because they are letting him run wild in this script.
So, yeah, I think part of it is too, we mentioned that Raiders is this 1930 homage to 1930s and 40s serials. They intentionally, and I think this is where it all goes wrong. Spielberg said in interviews that their goal was not to do another homage to serials, but their goal was to actually be an homage to 1950s B movies.
Well,
what better place to put a action adventure 1930s serial character than
a 1950s
to 1950s B movies? I mean,
it's almost forgivable if that's what they're doing. It's almost forgivable, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like there's some earnestness there.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that's where the whole thing is. Like, you're exactly right, Christian. You've taken this, you've taken a character from one genre and put him into another. To say nothing of everything else, which let's segue into that now. But I think just right off the bat, that they forgot about the tone of their original series, which I think is maybe the umbrella over all of this. But let's get into some specifics. So Christian, if there's one moment, because I think this movie's been ripped unfairly, a lot in the past decade. But if there's what to you maybe stands out as maybe the most egregious sin that this film commits in your mind?
I think it's definitely the narrative, some of the narrative aspects of the film, in the sense that a lot of things are happening to Indiana Jones as opposed to him as the protagonist making them happen.
Yeah,
I watched several YouTube clips from Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark where he's puzzle solving. And for instance, he snaps the Staff of Ra and in the Well of Souls, and he makes the thing, and realizations come to him, and he's figuring stuff out on the go. Whereas in this movie, he's looking at stuff and reading things and explaining things and connecting dots, but he's not showing us anything. He's just strictly talking about it. And he's talking about, even if there was some narrative device for him to have to show us, like a stick, or where he finds X marks the spot and he uses the thing to break the floor open and shit like that, even then it's way too convoluted. I think the most egregious out of everything, the thing to me that screams freshman screenwriting student at USC, Ray Winstone's character being a friend and then an enemy and then a friend and then an enemy.
And then a kind of friend at death. And
then to I guess a friend again who willingly accepts his own death, who kind of commits suicide by third-dimensional.
What the hell is that?
Who like, I don't know, like that's his weird version of interdimensional Harry Carey of letting himself being sucked into a vortex.
Yeah, but again, like what does it do? Like what's the sacrifice there? What? Because he does that, they have a 10-second head start on the vortex?
I honestly believe like the reason that happens so many times is because David Cope, the writer, or George Lucas or Steven Spielberg, they realized they'd written themselves into this corner and be like, we have to have them be sprung out of this trap somehow, or we need them to get caught. So, like, what a better way to have somebody turn on them or help them out that we didn't see coming? And I think that's the reason for flipping allegiances 5 times.
5 times.
Somebody pointed this out in my research. So and forgive me if you're listening and you wrote this somewhere and I read this and now I'm know that I'm trying to give you credit. I just don't remember because of all the articles I wrote, that the Winstone's character and Indiana Jones is like a corollary to Spielberg and Lucas, where Indiana Jones is clearly the brains of the operation. He's clearly knows what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. And Winstone can't keep deciding whether or not he's going to be helpful or harmful to the mission until eventually he gets sucked in and just gobbled up by bad CGI.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
That is good. Whoever wrote that.
So, you're right. It's such, his character is so all over the place, and it makes no sense. Like, I was planning on doing this, but then I'm planning on doing that. And it's like, to say nothing of the fact that it really, at any point, they could have just put a bullet in Indiana Jones and called it a day, like on several occasions. And I get that's the, like, I know that's the trope of the movie, but it's like, he's like turning on him. He's not turning on him now, so he can turn on him later. And it's very late 90s WWE heel turns.
It's the Big Show, dude. It's like a watered down version of the Big Show, man. No, okay, but here's the thing: is like you're right. Like you've got an actor the caliber of Ray Winstone, and you're basically reducing him to a punchline at the end of the movie where Indy can exacerbatedly say, "Well, so what are you, a triple agent?" Like, come on, man! Like that's literally all it serves. So he has a joke in the midst of the danger, like, and it's so egregious.
And I'm sorry, and forgive me. I think we may have just glossed over this a little bit, but I think Lou, you had mentioned something about like they could have put a bullet in Indiana Jones at any time, especially during the second half of the movie.
Yeah,
literally keeping him alive at one point to be translator for John Hurt, who is gone insane.
Oh, John Hurt.
And how they're going to get him to be the translator is that they're going to have him look at the skull. The skull's going to fry his brain. And then I guess he'll be able to talk to John Hurt in a way that they can both understand. And then some weird mind meld things happen where he says remember or Henry or whatever it is. And there's some sort of weird psychic connection that doesn't fully work. I'm sorry, I'm getting detracted.
No, but what you just said, though, Christian, is kind of what the biggest sin of this movie is to me, which is, well, they made Indiana Jones lame, which is what you said. Like, like he's not out there action adventuring. He's not doing the detective thing. He's not doing the 1930s Batman without the costume thing. He's not solving any puzzles. But the biggest sin of this movie to me is that Indiana Jones was never this kind of a movie. All right. Like, yes, he was dealing with supernatural things like the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail, but it was never something like aliens or like a freaking skull that gave you ESP. This is going so far over the supernatural wave. I mean, like, this is literally like In Search of type things, and that is never what Indiana Jones was. I mean, he was supernatural, but it was like grounded supernaturalism that he was going after.
All right, I will. All right, here's my hot take. I don't hate the aliens. I don't think. I don't.
Myself for having
I don't. But I don't hate the. No, I don't hate the concept of otherworldly creatures as the end goal, where because. And this is not a theological discussion here, but if you look at Indiana Jones has a history of him basically discovering something otherworldly in all three of the previous films. And so that part doesn't bother me. What bothers me is, what is the point of the aliens? He just discovers, or is it like the point is to discover that aliens exist? And if like,
yeah,
he brings the skull back, and that just makes like this, round table of aliens form one being to do what exactly?
Kill Cate Blanchett, obviously. I mean,
sure, and bully for them.
You're right though. It's just like they take off. Like, okay, bye. Like,
right. Like the Ark of the Covenant. When they discover it, they learn of the power of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point. In Temple of Doom with the 3 stones, and they put that together, and they learn of this otherworldly power that exists that can be harnessed and, needs to, can bring peace and balance to this, impoverished country. And then the Last Crusade, you've got the Holy Grail and its healing powers and all of that sort of stuff. All of the things that they discover serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
When you discover the aliens in this movie, they serve no purpose other than to give you really bad CGI.
Yeah.
No, definitely. You're absolutely right. The stakes of each one of them, or at least in Raiders and Last Crusaders, you're stopping Nazis from gaining a tool to win the war, take over the world, and in the Temple of Doom, he's saving a village and returning a holy artifact to keep things good.
And their children, literally protecting children.
And in this one, I guess the stakes are stopping the Soviets from developing psychic warfare. It's not like a tangible thing, I guess. Like, it's not a reality that anybody seems particularly threatened by, because it'd be like, oh, and also Cate Blanchett is supposed to be a psychic herself, which doesn't really which she uses to like know, which we don't realize is if she can actually do that or not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's what's at stake in this one, is stopping the Soviets from acquiring psychic abilities, which is laughable. I mean,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, man. It's just, you have Cate Blanchett, arguably on the Mount Rushmore of actresses, and you reduce her to like staring with her eyes wide. Like that's what you do with this actress. Like, come on, man.
I have tried to think all day of another Academy Award winning actor who gives such a bad performance. And the closest I can come is De Niro in Rocky and Bullwinkle.
I knew it was going to be De Niro somehow. How did I know that, Lou?
I mean, I'm sure there's De Niro post, 2005, take your pick. I don't know if stupid direct to video movies aside, this may be like one of the worst high profile performances by an award winning actor of all time.
I'll give honorable mention to Cuba Gooding Jr. and everything besides Jerry Maguire, but
we'll do Radio one day. I'm sure that will be a really
God.
that'll be the episode that gets us canceled.
Yes, most definitely. No, I wish that they could have, it's harder, especially coming off of Cate Blanchett in Thor Ragnarok. You see what she can do as a villain, and it's awesome. And it's just like, I don't, you're right though, like the stakes of this movie don't exist. I mean, like even in The Last Crusade, that was a completion, like trying to find his father and complete his father's work. There was a personal aspect of Indiana Jones we were getting, that we were discovering for the first time. And yeah, I mean, like this movie just, it's a bunch of action sequences cobbled together for no other reason than, I guess we have to fill the time somehow.
Right.
Yeah, and Cate Blanchett, we don't see her really see her do anything evil. I mean, do evil stuff, and I guess by proxy, because she's in charge of them, she is bad. But she more or less just kind of tells us that she's evil, or we're just to assume that she's evil because she has a Russian accent and she works for the Russians, basically.
Right.
And an unintelligible Russian accent at that.
Oh man.
I appreciate you, Christian, at least explaining to me what the goal was, because I swear to God, I couldn't. It was like a dog whistle listening to her talk, because I can't. I'm like, what are you saying? And I was too distracted by trying to figure out what she's doing with that accent or where she's trying to go with it, to pay attention to the words coming out of her mouth. The other, we danced on them just a little bit before we move on, is Cate Blanchett is maybe the second most cartoony character in this movie to me, behind John Hurt.
Oh man. What a freaking waste. This guy is this man is an acting treasure, was an acting treasure. And this is such a waste. This is the biggest waste in the movie.
Like, what was the thought behind this? Was it like, hey, did George Lucas see Nell, and then sat down and was like, I got it.
You know who would be great doing that? John Hurt.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's
John Hurt is an extremely talented actor, but his character Ox has this really is, from what we understand, has this really personal connection with Marion, with Shia LaBeouf, with Indiana Jones that, again, is just told to us, have been like, wait, Ox is missing? We got to help Ox out?
Right.
Okay,
it's like we're dropped in the middle of that.
Yeah, and but when we see him, he is, you know, he's a man, an older man with dementia, basically, that we don't see relate to any of these characters in a way where, like, oh, that's why you're so special and important to him. Or
yeah,
like,
but also not for nothing, but Shia LaBeouf is the only one who does any actual acting that makes you think that they care about this guy at all. I mean, like, there's the one shot of him like doing his best Shia LaBeouf cry that like is the only time where I'm just like, oh, this guy does mean something to these people, because Indy's just like, oh, cool, you have a skull, let me see it. And Marion's even just like, oh, hey, Indy, you know, like who has time for Ox over here? I guess just Mutt.
Yeah. I don't mind Shia LaBeouf in this movie, if I'm going to be like 100% honest. I think that it was a difficult point in his life, only to be followed by more worse points in his life.
By a trip to the cabaret, apparently.
And I don't know. I just think that he kind of gets unfairly shit on.
You know what? I agree with you there, Christian. I actually like Shia LaBeouf a lot as an actor, personally, and I think that he is good in this movie. I mean, you know, I understand why Spielberg blacklisted him, but
okay. Well, I had the Aliens, so I'm gonna have to give you Shia LaBeouf. Because,
you know, how many times is that sentence said in a movie context?
Well, what is Shia LaBeouf? Let me ask you a question, Lou. And like, we're friends, and I don't want this to affect anything, but like, you tell me why Shia LaBeouf is like, what's so bad about Shia LaBeouf?
Okay.
The fact that he's a younger actor. He's kind of got the same places that he goes to give the same performance and stuff like that.
Here's my and honestly, I have very little negative. Shia LaBeouf as a concept, I have no opposition to. I do think, and I don't think he doesn't give a bad performance in this movie. I think his character is ill-conceived, and poorly cast, because I don't buy for a second that this kid's a greaser or a tough guy. The Brando homage in the beginning is the most. It looks like it's like we're about to watch like a porn parody.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
And
okay, point taken.
That's what gets me. It's not him as a person or him as an actor. You know. Granted, whatever he's done since then, you know, I can kind of take or leave. But more, it's just the use of him in this film, and the fact that it also was really trying to nudge you towards that he was going to take over the franchise.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
More than nudge. I mean, God, Roman Reigns level setup here.
And the audience just booing the shit out of him.
Well, I mean, I honestly don't know. Like, at the time, nobody really knew about all the backstage drama with him and all that. Well, so, I mean, I think it has to be.
More time for this segment in the show yet, but like, this is something that I'm naive to. What backstage drama? Well,
I mean, he badmouthed the shit out of this movie to like anyone who would listen, and specifically badmouthed Spielberg as a director. And I can't remember who it was. I think there was an official interview where he said it, but he was definitely telling it behind the scenes to everyone who would listen. And pretty much, if you didn't see Shia LaBeouf for a while after that, it was because you don't badmouth Steven Spielberg in Hollywood.
Yeah, okay. but this asshole can do 3 movies with Michael Bay. And he can, so his judgment and character may be slightly suspect.
Yeah, just a little bit, but I mean,
yeah, I couldn't work with Spielberg, but man, that Michael Bay guy,
he's going places, man.
He knows what the hell he's doing.
Well, but
he really lets me be me. Mainly because he's too busy staring at Megan Fox's cleavage.
Yeah, he lets me do my faux Vince Vaughn thing here, and I'm just going good. But I also agree with you that like I don't know. The chemistry between, like, there's supposed to be some chemistry between him and Indy, right? I mean, like, ideally that's supposed to happen, right?
Yeah, I would assume so. I think that's what they would be, because I mean, we reveal spoiler alert, I guess, for that he's Indy's son. And I think what we're supposed to get is we're supposed to see he has the same adventurous quality that Indy has. So when we see him doing things like having a sword fight on a Jeep or swinging on vines, it's like, oh, he's kind of like the young Indy, where Indy would just find himself in these situations and fight his way out of it. And that's where, to go back to what you guys had talked about, how Indy is so passive in this movie, it starts to feel, when you put those two things together, like a conscious decision of saying, okay, they were too gun shy to make Harrison Ford do anything because they think he'd like crack in half or something. So
no, you're right. I think it would have been better if they would have divided the stunts evenly between those two characters. Like if it was really more of a Indy can still do these things, but yeah, Mutt also has that tendency inside of him, obviously. Yeah, if there was a little bit more of an even split there, aside from Harrison Ford just like saying damn and then steering a Jeep into something, like I think that would have been better.
Yeah. To say nothing of the fact that he is a 50s greaser who knows how to sword fight
for one.
Well, they explain that with one line of dialogue, that he goes to private schools with all the fancy sword fighting. And
so everyone knows how to sword fight.
White privilege rears its ugly head. Yeah, no. But that's I think he got shit on a lot, I think, because of, out of this movie is one of like the reasons that the movie was so bad. But I don't think it's him. I just think it's I think it's the character and the concept. And perhaps if you had cast somebody who maybe would be more believable as Indiana Jones's son, I said this on the Jurassic World podcast. I thought that Chris Pratt kind of has the in the modern Harrison Ford appeal. 10 years ago, he probably would have been too young and too fat to do it. But somebody who's at least within the ballpark, I think, would have made it work a little bit better.
Well, also just that I don't know, charming like humor that Harrison Ford had in the early films. Like Mutt really doesn't have that. So I don't know if they were just trying to establish a new tone for the movies that we're going to come after. But like, yeah, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a good fit in the midst of the movie itself.
So, okay, a couple of other things. The other part is let's talk about Indy. Let's talk about Harrison Ford himself on this. Is it just me, or was it seem like most of Harrison Ford's lines like 80 yard in here?
Oh yeah, no, they're 80 yard for sure.
Like, did he just show up and I love Harrison Ford. He's a film icon, but is he just like rolling out of bed these mornings and be like, oh, what the fuck am I doing? Okay, and then they just get into like, Harrison, we need a little more sound. Can you we'll do it in post.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. He gives literally two craps about this movie.
Yeah, I think that Harrison Ford was probably offered a lot of money, and they said, "You know what? We'll make this as easy as we possibly can for you, Harrison.
2-hour workdays, buddy.
Do the best you possibly can." For some reason, we all feel indebted to George Lucas to do this again. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do it. So here's, a part of the back end, and just, do the best you can. Mm-hmm. All right. Get on out there.
Well, and it sucks because early in the movie that the warehouse stuff I actually think is pretty good. Like you talked about the opening of this movie. I think it was you, Christian. Yeah, that's pretty good. You know, it's a good setup. You got the credits rolling like at the beginning, like old fashioned movies and stuff. And you know, I actually think the first shot you see of him in the silhouetted shadow is pretty great. And even, you know, the mystery of like, oh, how am I going to solve this stuff? Oh, I guess metal floats wherever we want it to now. But like, even that's like a puzzle mystery. But yeah, like after that whole sequence in the warehouse, it's just like, okay, well, that's Harrison's action scene for the movie.
Even the first like line of dialogue too, like it's that witty thing where he says to Ray Winstone, "Would you put your hands down? You're embarrassing us."
Yeah,
like, cool, and he's cool under pressure and witty. Yeah. Still got attitude, and he's biting and stuff like that. And upon that establishing, you know, first few minutes, you're like, all right, India's back at it. And you hear the crack of the whip for the first time, where he's on escaping from shit. You hear him punch somebody, and it's that classic Indiana Jones sound.
Oh yeah,
like we're on board completely. It's after that the wheels start to fall off.
Yeah, and I like that they even kind of play with his age in that, and he misjudges the jump to the truck. Like that's actually genuinely funny, you know. And then he just elbows the guys out of the truck and everything. And when they're driving the trucks towards each other, and Ray Winstone's just like, "You don't know him, you don't know him." Like that's really funny stuff. I was like, "Oh, why couldn't you just keep going with that?" All right, nuclear bombs.
Oh boy, we'll get. Okay, so all right, we're there. It took us 45 minutes to get here, but we can't ignore it. Okay, so yeah, that opening sequence finishes with Indiana Jones finding himself on a nuclear test facility that's decorated like a 1950s house, which the production value on what is a test site that's just about to be blown to shit. I mean,
yeah.
Some union carpenter somewhere really took time to craft like a loving dummy family and make it just look like this beautiful like 50s sitcom set.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, to where there's actual water coming out of the hose as the guys are outside.
Man, they really put their work into that.
Cable is installed. Howdy Doody is on TV.
Yeah. Hey, there have been physicists that have talked about whether or not the fridge could have survived the nuclear blast, and that's been memeified and talked about to death. That bothers me way less than the Edward Scissorhands community that they build just to blow it the hell up. Just the backstory behind that is like, well, we got to test it. Well, we got to make it authentic. Well, how do we make it authentic? Yeah, running water. We got to get the TV up and running, turned on for who? Who's watching? Oh nope. We need to replicate the exact circumstances. So the TV would definitely be on, and there'd be running water. We got to see what the impact of all this is. I was like, none of that makes any sense to the point where when he gets in the fridge and gets just blown out of the site, whatever, I don't care. Fine.
No, but I mean, like, also at the same time, how do you observe what happens to these specific obstacles? Like, there's no freaking GoPros in 1950. Like, how are you going to observe the specificity of what happens to the water when nuclear energy hits it?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Also, like the most disturbing thing to me about that is like he's been out all night after being on that rocket sled and hiking.
How did I forget about the rocket sled?
He's on the rocket sled. He gets off the rocket sled. He hides from the Soviet. He's been on the run all night long. He sees a town in the middle of nowhere, and what you have not seen in any of the other Indiana Jones movies is himself in a like contemporary society in his khaki pants and shirt and fedora on, where he's all dirty, where you've seen him a million times in the jungle before with bright colors and weird shit around him. That to me is like the most like thing that I'm not cool with is like dirty, grumpy Indiana Jones in 1950s suburbia.
Right.
Like
yeah.
that's what
Right. It's like seeing your teacher at the grocery store. It's like this.
exactly what it's like. It's really fucked up.
Oh. No, you're right. Now that I think about it, that visual is just totally unappealing.
It is, and it's so yeah. You're right. You're on. I'm on board. That part bothers me way more, and it also speaks to, because that was the other thing that I noticed, the color palette in this movie. And I'm not the most technically savvy guy to talk about visual effects or cinematography, but the look of this movie is made less to look like an old serial, more to look like a comic book.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part of this that is that when he's in that world, is that it's so bright and colorful. And it looks gorgeous, no doubt about that. But it makes it like, yeah, it's so off-putting for an Indiana Jones movie, because I don't know if there's been a color palette like that used in any sequence in any of the films.
No, you're right, because like Christian hit on this. Indiana Jones's whole appeal as a character is that he is imperfect, that he is gritty, that he's getting down and dirty. He's fighting on the outside of tanks. He's getting his clothes ripped to hell, like everything, and he still finds a way to be handsome and charming and hilarious while doing it. And you're right. So the jungle sequence, the suburbia stuff, like even the college, it's all way too bright. Spielberg always used a more opaque color palette for all three of the other movies, even Temple of Doom, that used a lot more reds and stuff because of the natural habitat of where the stones were. Even that was more drab though. So you're right though, this is definitely much more comic booky. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And little did he know that, actual comic book movies would be becoming a thing that year.
Yeah, that year.
and be done way better in the next decade. But so the nuke the fridge sequence has actually become the point. It's the film version of Jump the Shark. It's the shorthand for when a movie franchise goes off the rails. That part, and they've talked about the science of that, but there's some other, and I get this is an Indiana Jones movie, but there's some other really bad science in this movie. Like you had talked about the metal in the skulls. And am I wrong in thinking that it's very selective about what metals it chooses to attract?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like if it can take the gunpowder and make it act like,
can't it take the guns
yes,
of the people carrying the goddamn case?
Yes, but if I remember correctly, when they find the case, the guns actually do kind of zoom into it.
No,
but then later when they don't do that,
I don't believe they do. No, because I noted that.
Oh no, I think was it knives or something?
Her sword sticks to it.
There you go.
The swords, but these guys are sitting there. We just established that gunpowder and bullets can be used to lead us the way, and yet here these guys are with machine guns and bullets strapped to them. Nothing.
So why aren't they floating away, man?
And that's
because that's easy, like somebody just gets their gun pack is getting drawn towards this thing. Then they look at Dr. Jones and like, oh, I guess we don't need you.
Right. When someone like me, who is an idiot when it comes to science, can point out the bad science of your movie, you have Neil deGrasse Tyson must fucking hate this movie.
I would hope he would.
And then the other one that got me too was the not quicksand scene, or the quicksand that's where they use a snake to support the weight of a human body.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, I was when I was watching that today, I'm like, why don't they're gonna rip the snake in half?
Yeah, pretty easily, actually.
Yeah.
That's another thing that pisses me off too, because literally what happens is, this is the sequence of events, is Indiana Jones is actually doing Indiana Jones stuff and is trying to decipher what Ox is telling him, and he pulls out the map and he's going over it, and Shia LaBeouf says, this is our chance to escape. He hits a guy with one of the guns, he grabs his mom, and Indiana Jones and Ox run after him into the jungle and they escape really quickly. And then they get caught in the dry sand, which he has to take a minute to explain why it's specifically not quicksand.
Right. Well, it's important to be scientifically accurate here.
Yes.
No,
while we're fighting for our lives.
It's supposed to be a comedic beat where he's like, well, actually, son, no, this isn't quicksand. The difference is this, and this. And then they're immediately recaptured again. That scene exists only because they needed, it's been X amount of minutes and we haven't had an action beat yet.
Yeah.
Let's have them escape real quick, get caught in dry quicksand, sand, whatever, only to have them captured again. Which is,
let's just call it sand because it sounds more pathetic. Just get caught in sand.
Right. And we can at least do the callback to, and that's the thing, like they had the punchline in place without figuring out how they were going to get there, because they're like, well, he's got to do something with the snake because Indiana
because he hates snakes.
And that's great. That's fine to bring up that characteristic, but then to be like, oh, he's got to grab a snake to survive, and then not only like hold on to it, but then use it to like pull. Harrison Ford's a 200-pound guy, or he's $185 at least.
Yeah.
And he's just like yanking on this snake for dear life, and the snake takes it.
No, that snake was dead afterward.
Well, here's another thing too: is that he's only able to do it after he convinces them to call it a rope. Like, that's weird. Thing. None of you have to call it a rope, or else I won't be able to use it as a rope. PhD, like he could convince himself to be like, okay, this is only a rope. It's only a rope. Depending on how afraid he is of snakes, but to have them be like, no, I need you to say it, is a new level of bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even in Raiders, though, he has the snake in his seat and he doesn't react that way. He reacts harshly, but not like that.
Just tells Doc that he hates snakes, or whatever that guy's name is.
Yeah.
Hate snakes, Doc. I hate them.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You don't even see him throw the snake out of the plane, which I assume that he probably did.
Yeah, because screw your pet snake, Reggie.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything, before we move on to the next topic, is there any other moments or scenes or performances that stick out as part of the sins of this movie, the guilty side of this movie?
I'll just give you that they, in the realm of more actors wasted, Jim Broadbent is randomly in this for 5 seconds.
Oh yeah,
as the new Brody, that just he's there and then bye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One day of shooting for one of the best actors on the planet.
There are multiple Academy Award winning actors in this film.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane too to think about, because you've got him, you've got Cate Blanchett, John Hurt, I believe.
Yeah, he has one.
He has one. Harrison Ford should, but doesn't. But yeah, that's another one where it's just like, man, that's a great paycheck.
Yeah. Come on in, do a scene, say a line, and see you later.
Yeah.
Well, Spielberg loves those old English actors. I mean, from Robert Shaw to Denholm Elliott to fucking Jim Broadbent.
Mark Rylance now.
Yeah.
He's got his old British actors that he really, really, really enjoys using, which they always usually seem to work out. But Jim Broadbent, is literally in this for a scene, and he's like, so he gets suspended. Indiana Jones gets suspended, and the only reasons that he's not fired, and I assume that he's a fucking tenured professor.
Yeah, by now.
And the only reason that he's not fired is that Jim Broadbent resigned. I don't know how that logic worked, and I'm not part of academia, but like the current boss being like, well, I'm going to quit if you keep this guy on, and they're like, deal.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Especially when their reasoning for firing him is because they thought he was helping the communists.
Yeah.
helping the Russians. So that doesn't better your situation.
Yeah.
So
was that Lucas like trying to like comment on McCarthyism in a way?
Yeah, well, I think they're like, well, it's the 50s. We can, let's work in the Red Scare stuff, but it's so, half-assed. And I'll say this about Indiana Jones's professor status. There's no way he's tenured at that university because he's too busy gallivanting around to be a part of the committees and boards that you have to be in to get tenured. His tenure board is, I mean, unless he shows up with like the Ark of the Covenant, then they're like, oh, this is what I was doing instead of sitting in like the, financial aid board panel for the fifth goddamn time.
I mean, you have to think though, okay, so he finds artifacts for Brody for the museum. Is the museum a part of this university for all of these films? Because if so, that's a pretty big contribution.
I assumed that it was. At that point, like I think where he gets the Cross of Coronado,
at
the end of Last Crusade, like he's like, oh, the museum will buy them as usual, like whatever, or we'll take them or something like that. Right. So I assume that there was some sort of museum tied in with his university.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move over to, because there are some things I think we touched about this at the beginning, that it's a well-made movie right up until the last 20 minutes, which has just some really piss poor CGI. And I get that it's amazing to think that I don't remember. I guess I blocked that out when I first saw it. Was the reaction to the CGI when it first came out as bad as it would be if it came out today? Because it looks, is it really dated, or is it just really bad?
I think it's both, actually. I remember the gophers, the CGI gopher in the very, 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 very beginning of the movie, like getting a ton of criticism for one being like stupid and like cute, but also like looking bad as well.
Okay.
So I think it's a combination of just both bad CGI and then also too that CGI has gotten better.
Yeah, I think the end is what gets me. The aliens merging into the single being. Even when watching it, that was kind of the point in the movie, I think, where I gave up trying to rationalize that like I was seeing something good.
Gave up at the very end of the movie?
I think I was bargaining with myself literally the entire time. It was just like, oh no, but the dude got eaten by ants. I've never seen that before. Sure they can go over waterfalls. I mean, waterfalls work like that. I think I was just bargaining with myself so much. But then when that happened, I was just like, okay, I'm done. No. I'm out of here.
I should watch. I wonder if this exists with commentary by like Spielberg or David Cohen. I would love to know what what the ending is supposed to fucking mean. And he fucking tells us at the end that their gift was knowledge, but knowledge burned Kate Blanchett's eyes out of her head, and then.
So is this like a Highlander type thing? That's the gift of winning the tournament? I mean...
I don't know. I would just like some clarification as to what the aliens all becoming one alien, and then...
It's similar to call back to an episode that you and I did, Christian, in Batman Forever, when all of the energy from all of the brain waves go into Edward Nygma at one time.
There you go.
Causes a psychotic break. Perhaps all of the knowledge from the aliens consumes her mortal body or her terrestrial body, and it can't handle that kind of knowledge because she's of this world, not of the others.
Okay. All right. No, fair enough.
That means that her corporeal form might be out there somewhere. Sequels.
Same thing with the Ark of the Covenant, like the forces of God ripped people in half, or through people like lightning, just as though they were mere mortals.
No, you're absolutely right.
Or they were bad, I don't know. Did the Ark of the Covenant kill them just because they opened it up and they happened to be there, or because they were Nazis and bad people?
It's because they didn't close their eyes and look away. That's
It's written right there in the Bible, man.
Don't turn your no. I think it's I think it's part of it is that it is that it's they target her or they target because they target the evil guys, the Nazis. I don't think Indiana Jones gets spared in that because he closes his eyes. He gets spared because he's a good human being.
Yeah. Otherwise, that's some terrible rules written by God for himself.
Yes. I will smite all people who don't turn and look away.
Wait, what about that guy? He murdered people. Well, he closed his eyes. I don't know.
What are you going to do? I didn't make the rules. Oh, wait, I did. I'm God.
Oh, wait. Dang it.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
so
man.
you mentioned one of my sequences that I actually kind of like. There are things about this. There's flashes of like, oh, that's kind of fun. Things about this that I like, and I actually enjoyed the ant sequence.
That's a good fight.
It's a good fight, and it's got that nice like creepy factor. That's bugs in the Indiana Jones franchise are always a great staple.
Yeah.
And that one, I thought that was, one of those fun things of, oh, we're having a fight, but now we also have this to contend with. And it's moments like that kind of give you little glimpses of what could have been, or at least flashbacks of what you liked about the other ones.
Yeah. It's kind of like the plane fight in Raiders too. It's kind of like, he's fighting this big dude and he has also these obstacles that he has to keep avoiding at the same time.
Right.
And was that guy supposed to look like Vladimir Putin, or was that just me?
I think
that's cool.
I think all Russians look like Vladimir Putin, but
you're not wrong.
Hashtag not all Russians. But, yeah. So okay, are there any other sequences in the movie that work for you, or moments or things about the film that you actually do like, Christian?
Yeah, one particular beat that I really, really, really enjoy, and one of the more redeeming scenes, I think, with Shia LaBeouf is during the motorcycle chase. They, outfox the guys that are chasing them, and they pull over, and it's exactly what Indiana Jones does in The Last Crusade, where he smirks to himself, and his father disapprovingly looks at him.
Yeah, that's nice.
And stops doing it immediately because there's that like parental shame that he feels. I love that beat. I think that is really, really, really cool, and I wish there were kind of more of those. But yeah, that's something I really do enjoy.
Okay, how about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I also like the part of the motorcycle scene where they're in the library and he takes the time to answer the student's question before he just like nonchalantly gets back on the bike for the chase. I just think that's a pretty funny little moment that they get to share. Oh, you got to get out of the classroom and stuff. That was a pretty good beat. Yeah, I wish I could say something about Karen Allen, but I mean, nothing really stands out. I mean, it's nice that she's back, but I mean, it's just kind of like, oh, here she is, everyone. You wanted her back, right? Here she is.
Well, and I'm glad you brought her up, because that was actually going to be the thing that I mentioned. Is I'd agree that they don't give her much to do other than show up and be there, but Karen Allen, out of anybody in this movie, looks like the one person who is actually happy to be there.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
And she's having fun. You can tell she seems to be having a blast with the movie, or if at the very least she's selling it. And maybe she is just happy to be back because they passed her over for the other, for 2 movies, and finally, bring her back for this one. But yeah, I thought she just is such a charming presence, and she is a great foil for Indy. It is a shame they don't do more with her, but just having her presence there was a bright spot for me.
Yeah, it is logical. I mean, she is definitely the best of Indy's girls. I mean, I don't think any of us are going to choose Willie, and Ilsa is Ilsa. So I mean,
Ilsa, I'm Team Ilsa all the way.
There you go. God, she just had to take that cup over the threshold. What an idiot.
I don't know. There's something that fucked with me when I was a kid of like her fucking like the dad and the son,
Yeah.
and being like a German actress. And I don't know. The idea of like maybe it's like that whole sexploitation genre of films of like the evil SS woman. Like,
yeah,
just did it for me when I was a little kid.
There you go, man.
All right. So we mentioned earlier that this is this was, I don't think this was ever meant to be the last Indiana Jones. I think it might have been meant to be the baton passing over to Shia LaBeouf, but we have gotten reports in the past few weeks, just as recently as last month. Spielberg came out and said there is going to be a fifth Indiana Jones. Whether or not this is the last one for Harrison Ford, it probably is. And at some point, they are looking to move on with a new Indiana Jones, possibly, if even a female. So I guess before we wrap up, let's just touch briefly on what can they learn from this movie, and what do you hope to see in the next Indiana Jones movie? Let's start with Jeremy this time.
What can they learn? What can they learn? Bar George Lucas from writing anything. That's too easy, though. Honestly, I mean, we kind of hit upon it a little bit. If you want to pass the baton, that's good. All right. Like, Harrison Ford's getting up there. And look, these movies, I think they can sustain beyond Harrison Ford. I really do. But you've got to be very delicate with that. Like when it was coming out a few years ago, they're looking at, Chris Pratt or Bradley Cooper for like basically, I don't know, like 10 years before Raiders, Indiana Jones. I was okay with that thought, but I just also thought, like, if you just try to drop them into what you did before, the people are going to rebel against it, I think, a little bit, because they're constantly going to be preparing it. I think they kind of need to do, if they're going to go that route after this, they kind of need to do what they did with Solo, with giving somebody a lot of free reign to try to capture like the essence of what Harrison Ford did in that part. But with 5, I think that they need to treat Indiana Jones like we're all used to him being treated. In Crystal Skull, it really, really did just seem like he was along for the ride. And he needs to be that driving force. He needs to be the one that is driving the action forward, even if he is, older and can't do as many of the stunts. That's fine. But, we need to feel like Indiana Jones is still the thing that's propelling us forward.
Okay. Christian, how about you?
I mean, George Lucas, I think, I will go on record and say I don't think is nearly as harmful as David Coe.
Really? All right.
Yeah. I don't care for his works mostly, and majority. I mean, he's written some really great films. He wrote Jurassic Park. Which has a fan. Well, let's be honest, we're not watching it for the screenplay.
No, but you're right. I mean, like he wrote like the first Spider-Man with Sam Raimi. He wrote Mission Impossible.
Yeah, he's written some great movies that also are helmed by great creative forces, and the movies that. And I always look to this with a writer, especially if they direct their own work, when they have complete autonomy, which means that everything that is on the page makes it in the movie more often than not, and they have control over how the script works in their mind's eye. Secret Window with Johnny Depp, which is a piece of shit. Rush, if you ever saw the Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie where he's a bike
the bike messenger movie,
Bad Boy Bike Messenger, where he fights Michael Shannon with the power of a fixed gear bike,
the power of Dave Mira.
I think that some of his dialogue choices are a little shitty, and he is writing the new one, so I guess we're all.
Yeah, he's also I'm looking him up as we're talking about. He's also responsible for the Johnny Depp film Mordecai.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
That
Ouch.
is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look him up too, but it would be like he's got like Death Becomes Her as a written by credit, like Carlito's Way, The Shadow, which is a guilty pleasure of mine. Like there's some successes there.
Well, I think if you look though, because if you're looking at it, I think you're right. You're onto something, Christian. Is that the ones that he is written that actually turned out pretty good were ones that had exceptional directors.
Yeah.
Because you had Spielberg and Raimi, and then even Death Becomes Her had Robert Zemeckis. Carlito's Way's got De Palma. He wrote,
so does Mission Impossible, the first Mission Impossible.
The Paper, that's a great movie it's a Ron Howard movie. But anyway,
he's also responsible for The Mummy from last year. So take that for what it is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's we just have to. I guess.
I think you just changed my mind, Christian.
We'll see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because we are slated for a 2020 release on Indiana Jones 5. Harrison Ford's not getting any younger, so we will see what they do and how, if they can retire the character and have him go out in a more dignified way than this movie.
Could I ask a question to you two about that?
Yeah.
So many people have said that it would be like appropriate for him to, I mean, I've seen this a lot on message boards, like, oh, well, if they're going to do that, then they have to actually give him like a noble death in the movie. And I don't know, that always struck me as weird. What do you guys think?
I think the tone for that would be really hard to pull off for these films. Because these films have always had a sense of adventure and kind of whimsy behind them. That a death scene, I think, is just no. I don't think it. We've joked about it enough that they killed Indiana Jones enough in this film, but I think to literally watch him die, I think is probably the wrong choice. Even though Harrison Ford, I think, Harrison Ford's gone on record thinking that he should die because I think he wants to kill all of his famous characters. What are your thoughts, Christian? Should Indiana Jones die?
No, I don't think so. I think that if in my perfect world, Indiana Jones in the final scene is him putting his hat on another kid's head and said, "You lost today, kid. That doesn't mean you have to like it."
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And for whatever, take note. That he has an antagonistic relationship with, maybe in the film for whatever reason, and then we just assume that becomes the next Indiana Jones type person. That would be my.
No, Christian, I think you hit it, man. There could be some kind of race like between two factions type thing, just like the opening of Last Crusade. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome as a whole movie.
I mean, like we literally spend the trilogy, the original trilogy that was set up is set to be pretty cyclical. With the we learn from everything from getting the scar on his head to the little in joke when they're in the museum to where they see the thing of the Ark of the Covenant, and she's like, "Is that the Ark of the Covenant?" And he's like, "I'm pretty sure."
Pretty sure, yeah.
Like there's wonderful kind of callbacks to what the first entry and stuff like that, and I think that there you can do another loop around somehow. I don't know how, but I think that you can. That's what I would like to see.
All right. Take note. Yeah, I think I would like to see that. I think that sounds good to me. I'm on board. I just hope we are whatever they give us. It's something to help kind of wash the taste of this. This is the Rocky V of the franchise, and I'm hoping that the next one is the Creed, or
there you go.
redeems.
I'll take a Rocky Balboa. Even
I'll take a Rocky. Yeah, that might be more appropriate since Harrison Ford will still be in the lead. But it's that's the goal, is to make it more of a remind us why we love the franchise to begin with, and get some of the heat off. The last thing I did think, and I mentioned this at the top, but I do think it's interesting to see where this movie falls culturally, in that the backlash to this was so vocal. And I know that the Star Wars prequels were met with some derision, but 2008, really the social media age is starting to blossom. And, I don't know if we'd ever seen a movie that had this kind of a public thrashing. And I almost think that it's while it's deserved, it's kind of a bad thing, because we talked about this. I think I talked about this offline after the Jurassic Park, following Jurassic World podcast, about how, so many franchises, seem to, the fans of franchises seem to take so much ownership of a film, of a franchise these days, as we're seeing with the, what's going on with the Star Wars franchise, that in some weird way, I feel like you can trace it back to like this movie, because of the universal outcry that happened. There's an episode of South Park where Indiana Jones gets raped.
Wow.
It was a funny episode. Yeah.
It's their subtlety that makes them brilliant.
It was. And, and it was, that kind of like giving that voice to, nerd culture or film culture of, being able to just, be able to take on these big franchises and say, no, this sucks. This is not what we want. And then now 10 years later, it's turned in this, three-headed beast where, any change from a franchise is horrible. So it'll be interesting to see if they course correct and they go back to the original format, or if they, dare to try something different.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Does anybody have Kep's email address or something? We can send him Christian's idea, because I think that's I would watch that movie a lot, man.
Okay.
I'm sure he probably lives up near me. I'll find his address and just.
There you go. Toss some pages over his wall or something.
All right. So let's take this to the guilt meter, and I'm very interested to see where exactly we fall. I don't think I'm going to get any ones here, but I'm very curious to see. On the scale of 1 to 5 shame spirals, 1 being you love this film, you want everybody to see it. 5 being you either really don't like this movie, or if you do, you wouldn't tell people, you'd watch it by yourself and hide it away in your sock drawer. Where does Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull fall for you? Let's start with Christian.
I'll have to say 2. I own it. I bought it as part of the Indiana Jones, like bulk pack or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't, like I said before, it's a shitty piece of music played by a great orchestra. Still, it does have a lot of redeeming value. I have gotten shit for people that have seen it in my iTunes library from other people. I've brushed it off. I'm willing to live with it, and I accept it. So I don't have too many shame spirals. But as far as pushing it on other people, I think that they're fine with the first 3. I don't think this one is a necessary ingredient.
All right, Jeremy, what say you?
I'm going to straddle the line here and go with a 3. The funny thing about this is that Sarah, when we met, had never seen any of the Indiana Jones movies. So obviously I showed her the first couple and she loved them. And so she said, like, wait, isn't there a 4th one? And I was very tempted to say, no, that was just they were thinking about making that, but they never did. No, we showed it to her, and her reaction was the same as everyone's. It's just kind of like, oh, that was stupid and silly, and so we don't own this one. We own the other 3, and I don't think I'm going to quite force the 4th one on Gibson when he's old enough. So I think I have to give this about a 3. I'm a little ashamed of this movie.
Yeah, I'm with you, Christian. I own this movie because I would not have bought this movie individually, but I got the whole Blu-ray set, and now because of that, I'm sad to say I've actually used that Blu-ray more than I have the other ones in my collection.
Oh.
So I'm gonna have to go back and correct that. But as somebody, I show Raiders of the Lost Ark to the film class that I teach, and as a great example. And so I've seen that movie a lot. And so to then go back and watch this one and see just, where a movie can go right and then go so wrong with essentially the same, character and premise. So yeah, I think this is, gosh, I don't think I could recommend this to anybody. I don't even think, though, but I will say this. I'm going to split the difference here and I'm going to say 2.5 because I do think, I don't think this movie is as offensively bad as people think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good, but I also think that you could have fun watching this movie. I think you can have fun for the parts that work, and the parts that don't work are really, kind of laughably bad. And I don't think that they destroy the mystique of Indiana Jones. They just put him in a shitty movie. So for that reason, I would say if you're a completist, go ahead and check this out. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but if they make a fifth, if you bowed out of the franchise because you heard the backlash, maybe check this out before the fifth one, just in case there's any, connective tissue there.
Yeah. Honorable mention too. This is a fantastic episode of Riff Tracks. If anybody knows what those are. So go out there and get them because it's hilarious. All
right, cool. All right, so we got our big plug out of the way right up top. Christian, do you got any projects or anything that you want to plug?
No. If you're interested, you can check me out at Christian Krausby at Laps Christian on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. That's it. That's all I got.
All right, Jeremy, how about you?
Well, you can follow me at JGeck, JGOECK on Twitter, or, most of my commentary is posted through the Front Row Network website. That's still the Front Row Movie Reviews at this current moment. If there was an announcement at the beginning of the episode that it's different, I apologize for that. But coming up on the Front Row Network is a lot of really cool stuff. We've got a classics episode on Sunset Boulevard with Brandon Davis. That's going to be awesome. I believe, Lou, that you're going to be on an episode of Beyond the Mouse for Tangled, which is going to be really fun. Yeah, and of course, just again, mark those calendars. August 7th, if you're in the Springfield area, come out and be at the inaugural Front Row Flicks at the Hoagland Center for the Arts for the good Indiana Jones movie.
Yes. Yeah, and you can, as always, follow me on Twitter at @theFakeLouHair. Let me know what you thought about Crystal Skull. Let me know what you thought about the podcast. Please, if you are listening to us on whatever device you are, please subscribe, rate, review us, share, help people find out about us, and help us grow our audience and expand this community that we've been working on. You can find us on Facebook. Go to our Facebook page, interact with us, throw some comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say about our shows or any movies that you want to see us cover at this point. And as for me, you can I can definitely tell you a couple of things that are coming up. If they haven't hit already, Jeremy and I gave out the listener results to our 90s bracket. That was a lot of fun to recap. It goes in a lot of different ways. You can also then look forward to our August episode, which is actually my 1-year anniversary of Guilty Pleasures, 1 full year.
Yeah.
And we've got a good one coming up for you. I won't spoil it just yet, but I can tell you that it's by listener demand. You guys asked for it, so we're gonna do it. So I'll leave that out dangling as a teaser. But yeah, Also, check out our YouTube page, subscribe, rate, review, share, do all that great stuff. Okay.
Yeah. One last quick plug, Lou.
Yeah.
Coming up, we'll have a live podcast with the cast of Legally Blonde at the Muni in Springfield, talking about the movie Legally Blonde. And then also very excited that on Are You Afraid of the Podcast, Sarah and I were lucky enough to interview the creator of Are You Afraid of the Dark, DJ McHale. So that interview is going to be coming out very soon as well.
Awesome. Great. So lots of great stuff. Thank you again for listening, for tuning in. And for the Front Row Network, I'm Lou Hare.
I'm Christian Grousby.
I'm Jeremy Geckner.
And as always, we'll see you in the front row.